Alright, I'm working on a case study. It was developed by the Center for Audit Quality, the IIA, National Association of Corporate Directors, and the Financial Executives International Groups, called Hollate Manufacturing. We're referring to a Hollate Manufacturing Group. And the purpose of it is basically a workshop coming up that is, I guess, to funnel members to the anti-fraud collaboration organization, uh, contributed to by these groups. And Jack Brennan had his dream job. He had always wanted to head a manufacturing company, and 5 years earlier he received the opportunity at Hollate when he was promoted from the CFO position. He enjoyed the work, the exciting environment he had helped create, and the people around him. As CEO, however, Brennan understood that the buck stopped with him. He took his responsibilities seriously, both in running a successful business and ensuring that the business met all regulatory requirements and ethical expectations of being a good corporate citizen. He never wanted to be ashamed of anything he read in the newspaper about Hollate. Renahan, however, had just received a call from Cara Porcini, Hollate's external auditor, followed immediately by a call from Mike Soitani, Hollate's audit committee chair. They had news that stopped him cold. Hollate began manufacturing products for the home construction industry in the 1950s. For most of its history, it comprised one division that made windows and doors for the southeastern region of the United States. These products were sold under several private label and store brand names. 7 years earlier, 2 years before Brennan became CEO, Hollate acquired a Midwestern door window manufacturer that also had a division that made roofing products. The acquisition enabled Hollate to gain access to new geographic and product markets and also gain economies of scale in management and in raw material purchasing. Following the acquisition, Hollate held an initial public offering and became a public company. Hollate used proceeds from the IPO to acquire a manufacturer of home siding products, a manufacturer of prefabricated sheds and garages, and other two smaller home construction product businesses. In recent years, a downturn in the housing sector impacted the entire home construction industry, including the manufactured products segment. Hollate had taken a hit in both its revenue growth and profit margins, but overall it had fared better than its peers. In hindsight, Hollate might have overpaid for that first acquisition, which had occurred before the downturn. Its subsequent acquisitions, however, were made on favorable terms as they came after the early days of the downturn had driven down the valuations of many manufacturers. Hollate now had 14 divisions throughout the U.S. and Canada. It had 2,100 employees, sales of $1 billion, profit margins in line with historical industry norms, and a market cap of approximately $1.5 billion. With one or two exceptions, each division was profitable and was maintaining market share. CEO Jack Brennan and the management team. Brennan had joined Hollate 10 years earlier as CFO after working his way through several management positions and promotions at two other firms. While his background was in finance and accounting, he always considered himself a general manager. As CFO, Brennan had played a leading role in integrating Hollate's first acquisition and making it a success both operationally and financially. He also played a leading role in taking Hollate public and identifying its other acquisitions. When the previous CEO retired, Eric Hanlon, Hollate's board chairman, saw Brennan as the ideal candidate to lead Hollate's continued growth. As CEO, Brennan, with Hanlon's support, spearheaded Hollate's last four acquisitions. Shortly after becoming CEO, Brennan conducted a search for a CFO using a respected recruiting firm. Because Brennan planned to continue to grow the company, he wanted a top-notch CFO with skills beyond what Hollate might need at present. In particular, he wanted someone with significant public company experience, something the other members in the top team lacked. Brennan reflected that he was applying for the CFO position today. He might not make the cut. In the end, Brennan hired William Blackburn, Before coming to Hollate, Blackbird had served as CFO of a manufacturer that had grown through acquisitions but had reached the limits of its growth some years earlier. Because of this, he was looking for a new opportunity. Overall, Blackbird had 25 years of experience after earning his MBA, and he was also a CPA. A former colleague called him extremely intelligent and hardworking, someone who was the first to arrive in the morning and the last to leave at the end of the day. The colleague also noted that Blackbird had nerves of steel and kept his cool under the most pressure-filled circumstances. Blackbird believed that Hollate would not find many candidates with his level of experience directly aligned with the company's needs. When he was offered the job, he negotiated hard for a compensation package that included significant bonus opportunities. In particular, his bonus levels were tiered so that higher awards kicked in when Hollate reached higher revenue growth levels. Under the most favorable scenarios, Blackbird's bonus could be as high as his base salary, literally doubling his cash pay. He received no bonus at all if the company failed to meet the lowest tier target. His pay package also included long-term incentives in the form of restricted stock. Blackbird's contract, which he had negotiated prior to the start of the economic downturn, was closely linked to Hollate's acquisition strategy. Because home construction was historically not a high-growth industry, it would be unlikely for Blackbird to earn even the lowest tier bonus, and essentially impossible for him to earn a higher tier bonus if Hollate did not make any acquisitions. In watching these negotiations, Brennahan liked Blackbird's aggressive nature and can-do attitude and felt that Blackbird would be a great help to him in growing the business into a leading national competitor. After finalizing Blackbird's employment contract, the board's compensation committee restructured Brennahan's contract to reflect similar targets. In addition to Blackbird, Brennahan had three other of his top team: Chief Operating Officer Robert Sojohn, Marketing and Sales Vice President Stan Rellin, and General Counsel Margaret Malley. Sojohn had joined Hollate to work in the company's original manufacturing plant right after earning an undergraduate degree in engineering. In the 18 years since, he had held a variety of engineering and operational positions before being promoted to the COO position just prior to the first acquisition. Sojohn had the longest tenure at Hollate but was the youngest member of the top management team and the only one not put in his position by Brennahan. Rellin joined Hollate 9 years earlier in the marketing department. He had previous experience in marketing and sales and had done well at Hollate. Rellin's predecessor left the company after being passed over for the CEO position. Brennahan promoted Rellin rather than conduct an external search. Malley had been with Hollate for 3 years and was the company's first general counsel. At Hollate, she spent much of her time on contracts and legal matters relating to customers, but she also worked closely with the outside firm that Hollate relied on to handle acquisitions and other legal work. Company strategy. Under Brennahan's leadership, Hollate was pursuing a growth through acquisition strategy. The industry was undergoing significant consolidation, and Hollate was well positioned to take advantage of this trend as an acquirer. Although he viewed the industry downturn as a setback that made financing new acquisitions more difficult, and he acknowledged this need to focus on efficient operations, Brennahan remained committed to growth through acquisitions. In this regard, Brennahan considered himself eager but cautious. He did not want to get Hollate into any deals it could not handle or afford. Brennahan planned to jumpstart Hollate's growth as market conditions improved by making additional acquisitions with an eye towards filling the gaps in its product lines and geographic coverage. For example, Hollate was a leading supplier of doors and windows in the Southeast and Midwest, but was only a modest player in the Northwest. Yet, it was leading supplier of prefabricated sheds in the Northwest and Midwest, but had no shed operations in the Southeast. To fund its acquisition strategy, Hollate maintained a $150 million line of credit. Its agreement with the bank included several stringent covenants, including EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization targets. The top team spoke regularly about the growth strategy, and while they all supported it, they each had a somewhat different perspective. Brennahan was looking to find good fits that improved Hollate's market position. So John enjoyed figuring out how to most efficiently organize the different manufacturing plants, and when he thought about acquisitions, he looked at them as opportunities to improve how things worked. Rowland believed that the larger operation would improve Hollate's negotiating position with a large national retailer. Blackbird seemed most excited by finding and negotiating the next deal. Overall, Blackbird was the most aggressive supporter of making acquisitions and overwhelming whatever obstacles hindered progress, and he spoke often about his belief that Hollate could become one of the largest home product manufacturers in North America. So John and Rowland were excited about the growth plan, but looked at the CEO and CFO to take lead. Somewhat behind the scenes, Chairman Hanlon agreed with Brennahan's plans and was supporting a voice for him on the board. Board of Directors. Eric Hanlon had been a member of Hollate's board for 12 years and as chair for 6. When he first joined the board, Hollate was a steady performer. He sometimes thought that boring might be an apt description for Hollate at that time, and there were certainly no grand plans for acquisitions or public offerings in that era. Hanlon felt that the whole atmosphere at Hollate changed with the arrival of Brennahan, and he came to the belief that Brennahan was just what the company needed. After the success of the first acquisition and subsequent IPO, Hanlon played a leading role in promoting Brennahan to CEO position. His positive impression of Brennahan was apparent to the other directors on the board, and they repeated his respect to his views. Hanlon had more executive experience than any other director, and the second longest tenure on the board. In total, the board had 8 directors, including the CEO. One director was a descendant of the company founder and a large Hollate shareholder, but had no managerial experience. 2 directors had significant managerial experience. Brennahan had worked with these 2 directors earlier in his career and had reunited them to join Hollate's board shortly after he was named CEO. 2 other directors had joined the board as part of 2 of Hollate's acquisitions and had been chief executives at those companies. These 2 were also large shareholders. The remaining director, Mike Soltani, served as audit committee chair. Soltani had been identified by an outside recruiter, and he had no previous relationship with Hollate. Board committees. At the time of its IPO, Hollate reorganized its board to include the 3 standard board committees: audit, compensation, nominating, and governance, all required under the listing requirements of the company's stock exchange. Audit Committee Chair Mike Soltani joined the board 2 years earlier as a member of the Audit Committee, and he had served as that committee's chair for the past year. Soltani had served on the Audit Committee of another public company board, but this was his first stint as Audit Committee Chair. While he was not a CPA, Soltani had a background in finance and was the designated financial expert on the Audit Committee. The 2 other members of the Audit Committee were his acquaintances Brennahan had recruited to the board. They were financially literate, could read and understand financial statements, but not particularly well versed in accounting rules, even the most basic ones governing matters such as recognition of revenue and expenses. But they were financially literate. One of the first steps Soltani took when he became chair of the Audit Committee was to select a new external auditor. While he had no cause to doubt the previous auditors, a smaller regional firm that had served Hollate well for 10 years, he reasoned that because Hollate had grown significantly and planned to continue to grow, a larger national recruiting firm would bring new capabilities, expertise, and geographic reach. Other than one comment by CFO Blackbird, who insisted that the previous firm was a good fit for Hollate, no one objected to the change. Soltani also believed that the board, and the Audit Committee in particular, needed some instruction in basic accounting matters. He brought this up to Brennahan, who was receptive to the idea. In the press of other concerns, however, the director education never took place. I'm going to pick up with internal audit function in a moment.